Hello folks, and welcome back to the Vision of Veritas here. So last night I watched the debate, Oz versus Fetterman. I don't know if any of you got a chance to do that, but the only word that I can think to use to describe what I witnessed and what a lot of people witnessed was a train wreck. And it's not just because of Fetterman's inability to answer and comprehend questions. I also really didn't like the fact that Oz is a lukewarm Republican just like Pat Toomey. The unfortunate part of this is Oz has the makings of a rhino, and collectively we have to stop that. That's a huge problem that is absolutely not what our nation needs. But of the two choices, I mean, it's obvious who I do support, and there's a lot of valid reasons for that. Now, I actually am going to go through the whole debate here. Yes, it is going to be long, but I think it's really important that we do that. I want to preface this by stating my commentary will have absolutely nothing to do with the effects and the aftermath displayed with regards to Fetterman's stroke. On a purely human level, it's very unfortunate what happened to him. On a policy level, his policies are just as bad now as they were prior to his stroke. So my commentary will have nothing whatsoever to do with his stroke. Now, when we watch this here, I truly believe that Fetterman as a whole doesn't know the answers to some of these questions. The reason why I'm saying this is because you can tell when he gets a little flustered, and then it's almost like a default. He defaults to kind of throwing a cheap shot out at his opponent, Oz. And usually it's a personal attack. Now, as far as political debates go, I'm all for attacking your opponent as long as it's about the politics of the opponent. That's what these debates are for. But I have a problem with the cheap shots because you don't know the answer to the question, or you simply don't understand the question. So you default to an ad hominem answer. And it doesn't do anybody good. It makes you look like a moron.
The minimum wage in Pennsylvania and at the national level currently sits at $7.25 an hour and has not been increased since 2009. Each of our neighboring states has raised minimum wages. You see them there on your screen, including New Jersey at $13 an hour and West Virginia at $8.75. But Pennsylvania has not followed suit. The first question is for you, Mr. Fetterman. Do you support raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I think it's a disgrace at $7.25 an hour. And how can a man, with 10 gigantic mansions, has unwilling to talk about a willing wage for anybody? Imagine a single mom with 2 children, trying to raise with them, realizing making $31,000 a year, $15 an hour. I believe every work has dignity, and every paycheck must have dignity in it as well. True, I've always supported a living wage, and we make sure that everyone has economic security.
Now, for this question, you are given, once again, the typical leftist talking point answer and nothing more. Let's break it down here. What happens when you raise the minimum wage artificially? What happens when you artificially raise the minimum wage? And what I mean by artificially is when you arbitrarily set a wage that businesses have to pay, regardless of the net income that they're receiving, you're creating an imbalance and a business model that can't work. Not that won't work, not that there's a choice that it won't work. It simply can't work. Now, I've heard the argument that if you can't pay $15 an hour, which I don't know who came up with the idea that $15 an hour is a living wage. It's not. See, that's another thing. As soon as you hit $15 an hour, you're going to realize, hey, this really isn't a living wage. I want more money. But that's beside the point, another conversation for later. Once you realize that you can't tell a business to pay X number of dollars for a wage and have said business thrive, especially if they're a business starting out and they have to take on somebody simply because they don't have enough time to do it themselves or they're busy doing something else. You can't tell a business what they should be paying. Who do you think you are? When you tell a business a minimum wage they have to pay, not only does that drive up inflation because it drives up the cost of everything around you, having to pay employees more than even perhaps what they're worth, but it also stifles business growth. If you know you have to pay a specific wage, a brand new startup isn't going to be able to work. Oftentimes, when you start up a new business, the business owner doesn't take a profit for freaking years. And unless you've started a business, you wouldn't know that. Paying someone X number of dollars has nothing to do with the dignity of the work. It has nothing to do with whether or not you are worth it as a person on a personal level. You see, Democrats, they're making this about how you feel about yourself, what you feel you should be making, what you feel the job should be paying you. That's not how businesses are run. That's not how businesses operate. As an employer, I don't pay you based on what I feel about you. I pay you based on A, the job that needs to be done, B, how you do that job, and C, how efficient you are at doing said job. Everything with a business is a cost-benefit analysis. Let's just take something extremely basic here. Say I pay person A $20 an hour to make 3 pool tables every hour, and they're able to make the minimum of 3 pool tables every hour. Now, say person B comes along and I pay them the same $20 an hour, only they make a 4th table per hour. They're able to make that 4th table. As a business owner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump the pay, say an extra $5, $6, $7 an hour, because I'm able to sell that additional table, which brings in more profit for both the business, myself as the owner, and the individual building the pool table. That makes him far more valuable than the individual doing the minimum amount of effort. Now, I know that's a very basic example, and it doesn't work in all situations or circumstances, but that's kind of how things are. Everything is a cost-benefit analysis, and that's exactly how it is with employees. Whether you like it or not, when you are an employee, you are essentially an investment, a piece of property to the company that either A, will appreciate over time, or B, depreciate over time. And if you depreciate, you're out of there. But if you A, appreciate over time, your worth to said company goes up. And that gives you latitude to gain more money within the company. But simply arbitrarily setting a minimum wage, especially nowadays, that's one of the worst things you can do, because you actually stifle development doing that. And once again, this is the left also peddling class warfare. That doesn't do anybody any good. And once again, that is a classic tactic of those with socialist values. Instead of going out and making it for yourself or doing it for yourself, someone comes along and says, hey, you know what? Do you really think it's fair that person A has more than you, or company A has more than you? Wouldn't it be nice if I made a law or a policy that brought their wealth down more to your level? Notice they never say anything about you gaining more money. It's all about them getting more money. It's all about the government getting more money. They never say anything about you getting more money, but you know what? We'll take more money from them to bring them more down to your level. That's a real twisted way of doing things.
I have a follow-up for you, Mr. Fetterman. What do you say to small business owners who have told us that if the minimum wage were increased to $15 an hour, it would put them out of business? You have 30 seconds.
Now, we all have to make sure that everyone that works is able to, that's the most American bargain, that if you work full-time, you should be able to live in dignity as well, true. And I believe they haven't have any businesses being you can't have businesses being subsidized by not paying individuals that just simply can't afford to pay their own way.
Now, I don't know if Fetterman doesn't understand the question, doesn't know how to answer the question, or simply doesn't know the answer. But what he said had absolutely nothing to do with what the question was. You know, being in America doesn't guarantee you a wage. Being in America doesn't guarantee you anything. I don't know why the left peddles this utopia where the ideals of I exist, therefore I deserve are suddenly a fictitious reality. I mean, those ideals couldn't be further from the truth. Just because you live in America, it doesn't guarantee you a wage. It doesn't guarantee you food on the table. It doesn't guarantee you a roof over your head. All the opportunities exist for you to go out and get those things, but you're not guaranteed it simply for existing. Now, whether or not you think it should be that way is perhaps a discussion for another time, but that's not the way things are now, and they're not going to change anytime soon. So for the time being, what you want, you need to work for. If you want to live in a society where you feel entitled or you're guaranteed things simply for existing, well, you're more than welcome to travel back in time to go over to the former Soviet Union. They had that mentality. The only thing is, you had the very rich people who were loyal to the party, and you had everybody else who was subservient to those people. What you had was a wealthy class, and you had a poor class, and that poor was equally distributed across the board. There was no middle class. That's essentially what you advocate for when you garner the ideals of I exist, therefore I deserve. It's just not taught that way in schools because they don't want you to know that. The man also can't answer the question because he knows nothing about business. Big businesses, small businesses, any business is a freaking lemonade stand. He knows nothing about business. Your average 5-year-old with a lemonade stand who understands that you have to take profits to buy the lemonade mixture. You also have to take the profits to buy the cups, to buy the containment vessel with which you pour the lemonade in to hold it to keep it cold. Your average 5-year-old knows more about business than this guy.
To you, do you support raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
I think market forces have already driven up the minimum wage. I was with a hotel worker actually here in Harrisburg a few months ago, and he was telling me how hard it was to live on the $15 an hour that he was getting paid. John Fetterman shoots too low. We want much more money than that. And there are many ways to achieve that, but John Fetterman thinks the minimum wage is his weekly allowance from his parents. He's not really cognizant of the real challenges of business owners who've got to balance that with employees. Thankfully, we have a solution. And John, you didn't answer the question. You can't put businesses out of commission in order to pay more wages because the wages will go to zero, which is John Fetterman's radical plan if you really follow it to conclusion. Here's what I would do. We have one of the richest energy states in the country. I believe if we could unleash the energy beneath our feet here in Pennsylvania, there'd be plenty of money to go around. We'd have increased wages, a more reason for students to take vocational classes to be able to learn trades, which I'm strongly supportive of. We'd also be able to pipe that gas, improve our economy, and reduce inflation. That's a plan that works, and it's humble enough that I can say it broadly.
Thank you. I want to give you, Mr. Fetterman, a 15-second follow-up to what he just said about you.
No, again, it's remarkable. He hasn't really had any answer that he actually had about that in his. He doesn't want to talk about having somebody having a living wage and having somebody able to survive. Again.
And I want to come back to you now, Mr. Oz, for a quick follow-up. What do you say to those Pennsylvanians that he just spoke of that are trying to survive on $7.25 an hour, which is less than all of our neighbors? You have 30 seconds.
Oh, I don't think you should have to survive on $7.25 an hour. I want the minimum wage up as high as it can go. I want to highlight that I have an agenda for prosperity, unlike John Fetterman. I want us all getting paid a lot more than $15. And I answered your question directly in a way that would preserve business owners, job creators, so they thrive, and we'd have lots more employees entering the workforce and then prospering, getting paid $25, $35, $45 an hour. But we're never going to get there if we don't unleash our energy. And John Fetterman's stubbornness on calling it a stain on Pennsylvania is an insult to those workers.
To be clear, you said you want people making a lot more, but that's not through a federal law of minimum wage. That's through market forces?
Market forces should drive it up anyway, and it's already done that.
Thank you.
You know, you should be able to get paid much more than $15 an hour.
Thank you.
Okay, so what Oz did here was he gave the typical Republican neutral answer. Well, he didn't specifically say that he wanted to raise the federal minimum wage. He wanted to open up the opportunities for there to be higher wages better than a $15 mandated federal minimum wage, which is the conservative ideal, actually. And really, it's the right way to go about doing things. Allowing the markets to drive up the prices naturally, rather than using the excuse of inflation to usher in a $15 minimum wage, which would be devastating on an economy that is already inflated higher than it has ever been in 40 years. I'm not going to keep saying the same thing with regards to the minimum wage, but Oz here does have the better of the two ideals. If you stuck around and listened to this entire thing, I cannot say how appreciative I am of you, for doing so. You didn't have to do that. Please listen to it, share it to your friends, take it to heart. If you've learned anything from this, please like, share, and subscribe. Like I said earlier, please send this to your friends. I need all the help I can get with expanding this channel, and that's what I would truly love to do, but I can't do it without you. So, once again, at the risk of sounding like a parrot, please like, share, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it.